Hi, I'm Steven Cragg. I've just finished watching Boy Swallows Universe. I'm sure a lot of you have already seen it, but if not, it's amazing. I'd highly recommend it. Filmed locally in Brisbane. I know a lot of the people that were in there and a lot of very passionate people working in there, and it's come out amazing. It's very, very popular worldwide and with good reason. What I've noticed is there's a character called Gus in there that a lot of people have questions about, and I feel like it wasn't answered in the show. I have a lot of personal experience with Gus and things that have happened to him. Um, so he's a selective mute. They don't use that word then, but then in the 80s, I don't think they even had that saying. They may have called it elective mute at some point. That was called elective mutism. Now it's called selective mutism. It's still very unknown because not many people experience it, and they tend to not talk about it too much. So I don't think I've ever met someone that's selective mute in my life. Uh, I've heard of one at a school that I worked at, but I wasn't able to come in contact with them. But essentially, Gus has gone through some trauma, and in response to that, he stopped talking. He was perfectly able to talk, but didn't talk. Uh, he may have, it wasn't shown in the series, but he may have talked at home with family at some point. But in the movie, and until he does start talking, he doesn't talk at all. So it's kind of assumed that maybe he can't talk, maybe he's a mute. But we find out later he can talk. He's just not. Some people would say he's chosen not to, but that's not true, and I can tell you a bit more about that. So my personal story is that I went through trauma when I was two. Um, Essentially, to do the long version, I had to have a small procedure done. I was taken to the hospital by my parents. I have a very small flashback from it, even though I was only two, of just being left there and the nurse having some sort of red medicine that I had to take. It's the only bit I remember. I remember a lot of the stories, a lot of the feelings afterwards, though. So I know a fair bit of what happened. But essentially, I was left there alone away from my parents, possibly one of the first times I'd been away from them. And the procedure was done on me without anesthetic. It was very, very painful. When I got home, I didn't talk anymore. So it took a long time for them to work out why. But essentially, I went through trauma, and from there, I lost a lot of trust in people. Is what they've told me, and I believe that's probably true as well. I did have a lot of lack of trust. I felt like I could only rely on myself. Our parents didn't help that a lot. They were pretty supportive in their own way, but they were also very absent parents, and they were busy. They had a business. They were trying, but they just, I don't think, knew how to not be absent parents, to be honest. But essentially, I think initially I didn't even talk to them, and then at a function, I guess I talked to them. But I went from a very, very talkative, outgoing kid. Uh, I started talking very young, and so I'd already talked to quite a bit by this point, and then just stopped completely. I only talked to my parents. At some point, in a year or two after that, I started talking to my grandparents, and um, over the years, I would add one person here or there, once building multiple years of trust. My brother, I think, even took a couple of years. Got an older brother I didn't grow up with. He's much, much older. He moved out of home before I was born, so he visited a few times. I saw him a little bit. That's why it took a long time for me to even talk to him. But uh, essentially, what added to it, and I believe is a big part of selective mutism, at least for a lot of people, is autism. I'm ASD, I'm on the scale. Um, and I think that's a big part of it. I'm also very introverted. I'm not sure if I'm introverted naturally because of um, this trauma that happened and not talking for 8.5 years. But um, it either way, I'm introverted now. Probably would have been anyway because of the autism and other things, but it's impossible to know now. So, uh, going through preschool, school, all that sort of thing, without talking was very tough, and that's something that wasn't explored a lot in in the series because he had his brother. So his brother was his mouth basically. He'd learned their own little version of sign language, drawing in the air, a little bit simplified for my liking, but worked great for the story. But very simplified sign language that his brother could understand. His brother could talk for him, and they were always together, and that's amazing. But personally, I didn't have that. I had no one at school I knew. I didn't have friends. I didn't have anyone like that. I made friends with the neighbor, and I think after a couple of years I talked to her as well. But the struggles of going through school and only having the initial explanation from my parents to the teacher that Steven doesn't talk, and that's just how it is. He's a selective mute. They didn't understand. They didn't get it. So teachers would hassle me to talk, even abusive at times. Principal did the same. Students always did the same. So I always had a lot of bullying, constant every day, and you can't make friends if you don't talk to them. It's very, very difficult. I did manage to do a bit of what Gus did, which is learn to talk with hands. I can't remember any specifics anymore, but I would be able to. I did a lot of pointing. I did a lot of acting, I guess, of the thing I wanted to do. So I guess if I wanted to kick a ball, I'd pretend to kick a ball, or whatever it is I needed. I was able to communicate relatively well just with pointing at things, especially to people that were getting used to me. If they'd been in my class for a while, been my teacher for a while, I could communicate with them well enough so they knew what I was talking about. So I guess I'm an actor now. I said I was introverted. I'm still very introverted, but somehow over the years, and I'll tell you a bit of it in the story, I've been able to really push myself into very uncomfortable situations on purpose to get past all this. So with the communication, if I couldn't do it, I could write it down. I was able to write a bit from preschool when I was 4. I know I could write my name, and I was well ahead of the class. My parents were pretty good at teaching me young. It's one thing they did well. So I was able to communicate pretty well just by writing and that sort of thing. But going through that sort of thing, something Gus didn't have to deal with as much, because he stopped talking when he was 7, where I was 2. So I had to learn to communicate in the most important years inside my head. So, and by listening. You get to be a very good listener when you don't talk. But all of my communication skills came from listening, mostly listening to adults, a bit of TV. I didn't have a lot of people around me. I was often on my own at home, being an only child with busy parents, and at school, was always on my own. So, but just listening to teachers, listening to other kids talk, that's how I learned to communicate. And it's not the most effective way to communicate. If you don't practice something, you're probably not going to get great at it. If you only read a textbook and never actually practice the thing, you probably can't do the thing very well. So communication took a really long time, and still struggle with some things. I think that's half related with autism, half related with I didn't learn communication properly in my childhood years when the brain was forming. So that can be really difficult. And Gus got past those early 5 years that really cement everything, and got to 7 before his trauma. So I think that would be beneficial for that fictitious character over mine. There was talk on the internet about it being based on the writer's actual brother, but I couldn't see anything completely confirmed about it. But so for me, my parents tried everything. I went to a hypnotist, I remember. Doctors, of course, had all sorts of tests and scans, and psychologists, and they didn't understand it at all. No one had any idea about selective mutism. Some of them knew it existed because they looked it up before I got there. But even though I remember very clearly that the hypnotist gave up, asked my parents to leave, and then was just abusive to me. Just said, if you don't talk, I'll do this. I can't remember exactly, but basically threatened me to talk, and nothing was going to make me talk. It was just not going to happen. And one of the things that people didn't understand and don't really understand still is that even though I could talk, I felt that I couldn't. So um, there was times I wanted to talk. I trusted people. I remember in particular a teacher that I really liked in grade 4, Mr. Reek. No idea what happened to him, but he was very kind, very caring, very patient, and I wanted to talk to him. I remember organizing with him to before school to go into the class like an hour earlier and sit there and just see if I could do it. Just he would just wait and not say a word, and that's a perfect situation for me. And I'd open my mouth and I just couldn't make it come out, no matter how much I wanted to. It felt like I was completely unable to, even though I had the ability to. I was very good at talking at home, but it's just, you know, it felt like a physical inability, even though it wasn't. So, you know, a lot of the abuse was about me being dumb or stupid or whatever, or mute, or that I couldn't talk. They would try and entice me to talk, you know, because they'd heard that I could. In grade 2, for example, I had to, in order not to fail my English, like I did the previous term, I had to record a reading, I think it was, on a tape or whatever, and take it into school so the teacher could hear me reading. They didn't, you know, wouldn't trust my mother saying that I was able to read out loud and that sort of thing. I was very, very good at reading from a young age. I believe my brain progressed really quickly, like a lot of autistic kids. I wasn't diagnosed as autistic at all until recently, but you know, we didn't know that was a thing back then. But I know my brain was well ahead of my peers. I was very bored at school, but the yeah, so there was times that, you know, the teacher would say he can talk, he just chooses not to, which is rude, but that's the sort of words I would use, is that I'm choosing not to do it, when that's not really the case. When it's you know, it's I'd say almost emotional disability. It felt like a disability, but didn't affect me in any other way. I was a sporty kid. Well, eventually I was a sporty kid. I was able to beat my peers in maths competitions on the board. Shootout was a game we used to do where we used to have to hold the finger up and point a gun or shoot or whatever the thing was, and then whoever was able to do that first was able to answer the question first. And I was able to write it on the board quicker than they could pull their finger, because I was able to calculate it quicker, the maths question. And so I'd almost always win that, even though I had the disadvantage. So nothing wrong with that, but with all the bullying telling me I was dumb and stupid, they would actually find any reason to make fun of me because I didn't retaliate. I just had to listen and take it in. And I learned not to worry about it. I learned to suck it up, basically. I didn't call them names because I couldn't. I didn't even bother writing their names. I just learned to be calm in those situations. And eventually, when I did talk, I started thanking people when they insulted me, and they hate that. So advice for kids: start thanking people when you're bullied, and see how that goes. But so I guess how it progressed from there. There were situations that I was very disadvantaged, of course, not talking. But one situation, for example, was something I can't talk about in detail because there's people involved that might see this, but had to deal with a situation with the police when I was young, and I was very lucky I was with someone else that was able to talk. Otherwise, I don't know. I don't think I would have been able to. I would have been writing it down, which would have slowed things down. But and then I nearly had to go to court and testify. And I don't know how that would have gone if I wasn't able to talk. I was very scared about that. It was called off last minute. But you know, this was all part of it. Nothing was going to make me talk because I felt like I was unable. So I guess the question is, why did I start talking? I can't remember exactly why Gus started talking. I believe it was a situation where he needed to save someone's life or something to that effect. Or actually, I think he insulted someone that was going to hurt his brother or his stepdad. But for me, I was finally being accepted. This is toward the end of grade 4, I think. It was at a new school. I went to a school for 3 years. Parents, 2 years. Parents moved me because there was too much bullying. The principal was terrible. The the librarian was really bad, and went on to another school for a year and a half. Moved towns, went into another school, and that school was much better. Really good principal, very, very good principal, Mr. Jones, and great teachers, I should say. And they really made a difference, and I think they encouraged the kids just to leave me alone. And so at that school, I was more accepted. I was having friends that accepted that I didn't talk to them. I'd hang out with them on weekends and not talk to them. And it was fine. And after a while of being accepted and them not constantly telling me to talk, um, I'm very stubborn. If someone wants me to do something enough, not as bad now, I've worked out of it, but for most of my life, if someone pushes me to do something, even if I want to do it, I won't do it. Just hate being told what to do, I guess. And I think that's a bit of a defense mechanism from my childhood, from bullying, from um, the way my parents tried to raise me, and issues there. But I think that was a defense mechanism. If someone really wanted me to do something, it was best that I didn't. So I wouldn't do it. So when they stopped hassling me and just let me be me, there was one day when I had a couple of friends. One at a time, I started talking to them. I think there was two from memory at that school. It may have only been one, but maybe two. And then my next best friend, for the first time in a really long time, asked me to say one word. From memory, he just said, "Oh, come on, Steve, just say one word." And I said, "Boo," because I thought that would scare him. I thought it would be funny, and I felt comfortable with him. David, that was. He's still on my friends list, so he might be watching this. But he, yeah, thought it was the best thing. And not only that, all of the kids around got together and they were excited for me. Even ones that bullied me in the past, oh, let me hear you talk, let me hear you talk. None of them had heard me speak before. And so it became that I was able to talk to David after I said boo. And then one at a time, I would say boo to someone and I was able to talk to them. That was my initiation, I guess, for a while. So I was nicknamed Boo for a while. So I'd say Boo, and then I'd talk. And I don't know when, but it was really short, maybe even a week after that I just talked to everyone. I just opened up to it. So it was a very long, very painful process. During that time, I had child services try and take me away from my parents, take me to a special school because they thought something was wrong with me. But an IQ test, I haven't seen it. My mother told me that I scored like 128 or something ridiculous when I was 7 or 8, and they left me alone after that. That's the story, but I don't know. But yeah, so lifetime of issues, just started talking, and life got a bit easier from there. But still a lot of leftover consequences to that. I never learned really to talk about emotions and feelings. My parents don't at all. Never have. I've never, as far as I remember, I've never seen my parents hug. I've never seen them kiss, never seen them say they love each other, anything like that. There's a whole story behind that. But I didn't learn emotion and how to communicate it. And that eventually, when I had relationships, caused problems. I just wasn't great at it. Basically, think of the problems males have, and I was worse at it. So, and part of my autism, I'm very literal. I'm very to the point, and people take offense to that, even when I don't mean any sort of offense. I say, to me, it feels like I say the sky is blue, and they say, "Oh, you're upset at me." It just makes no sense to me that I've said a fact, but and they're upset. But that's probably more the autism, but also I didn't learn all the the subtleties of communication, and that's interesting. That's not something that the Gus character went through. I thought it was interesting choice that they got him to speak a bit unusual, like he was completely out of practice. You almost had a speech impediment or something. Like he wasn't completely able to speak properly. He put on that, and he put on that really well. The actors in this show are amazing. But I thought that was an interesting choice because I believe he was selectively mute and not completely mute. I don't think he didn't talk to his brother when they were alone. If they didn't show it, but they wanted to build up, of course, the story and suddenly be talking. But I believe he would have been talking to his brother. He had practiced talking and wasn't unable to. So I thought that was a bit of an interesting choice. But for people that don't understand selective mutism, which is almost everyone, that probably made a lot more sense in the storytelling. So I think that's an interesting way they did it. But yeah, it's a real thing. It's a thing people go through. There's some people that go their whole lives without talking, and you never really hear about them unless you go looking. They're not on TV. They won't go on TV and do an interview about it. They might write things, and I've seen things written by them or about them. And some of them don't even feel comfortable writing and like doing anything public at all. Like they might write to their friend, but they don't want anyone else to see it. So it's horrible, but that's something that people go through in silence. Not only are they silent, they don't get really any help, and they don't have any avenue to tell anyone about it, even the social media age. So there is people out there, and there's some people that'll just not talk for a year or two, 5 years, whatever. I've heard there's people longer than me. My mother always told me that I had some sort of world record for not talking that long because some magazine told her that, and they were going to print some story. I don't know if that ever happened, but I don't believe that's true. I've seen stories online of people, stop talking as a child and start talking in their 40s or something like that. So, but this is a real thing that happens, and I guess it'd be cool to bring a little bit of awareness to it. I'm not sure what to do about it, but if someone who's selectively mute, send this to them, or spread it out there so they get to see it. I'd love to have a chat with them online. I'm easy to contact, comment on the video, and I'll message. Because I've never actually talked to someone that has selective mutism, and it would be great to help those people out, give them some confidence, and see if there's anything I can do to help, I guess. So yeah, thank you for watching if you've watched this long. Any questions, please ask. I might even do some more videos if there's some genuine questions and people want to hear about it. I'd love you to subscribe. I'm going to put all sorts of stuff up. I'm an actor. I need to start building my channels, and I'd love to have this shared around. Subscribe, see what else I put out there. Maybe some more content about this as well, if people want to hear it. So let me know. Thank you.